Russian troops celebrated their victory over Nazi Germany during the European Victory Day celebration in Moscow's Red Square in front of the Kremlin and Soviet leaders. As in the Roman Empire, soldiers threw the flags of the defeated at the feet of the victor, the man who defeated Adolf Hitler, Grand General Joseph Stalin. After 20 years in power, the Soviet ruler is at the peak of his glory. A poet wrote this, "Stalin, you are taller than the high heavens. Only your thoughts are taller than you, your spirit. Stalin is brighter than the sun, and we call him the little father of the people all over the world. He represents the hope of a fairer society." He is the idol of hundreds of millions of people in France. We also sang his praises wholeheartedly, proclaimed our fervent love for Stalin, and assured him of our unwavering trust. Meanwhile, this man is one of the greatest criminals in history. He murdered his own people with unlimited brutality. We will ruthlessly annihilate anyone who threatens. With facts and even ideas, the unity of the country established the Gulag and enslaved 18 million people. Destructive party members must be cut off to protect them from disease and infection. Cynically, he caused a famine that killed 7 million people. Death solves all problems. Without people, there's no problem. He sacrificed his family for his own power. A true Bolshevik should have no family. We're going to tell you the amazing story of this son of a little craftsman who became one of the most powerful figures on the planet. We will tell you how this man who claims to bring joy to his people has become one of the deadliest dictators ever known through his megalomania and fanaticism. The year 1924 is when it all started. We're near Moscow, in the middle of the Russian winter. Lenin, the father of the Bolshevik Revolution, has just died. It was one of the first films to feature Stalin in the lead role. He's carrying the leader's coffin next to Soviet officials. Stalin is 6 years old. He is the General Secretary of the Communist Party, a relatively low-key position among his comrades. No one could have imagined that he would be the successor of the great Lenin. They don't know that in 10 years, he will arrest and execute almost every one of them. No one knows yet who Joseph Stalin really is. To his comrades, he was an insignificant figure. One of them, Stalin said. It is the most outstanding mediocrity of our party. Another confirmed that we are not afraid of Stalin and that as soon as he wants to get on his high horse, we will eliminate him. For a long time, Stalin has been hiding his true intentions. His real name was Iosif Jugasville, and he was born in 1878 in the era of the Tsars, a monarchy based on inequality and obedience to the monarch. A poor childhood, an alcoholic and abusive father grew up with an Orthodox monk. He joined the struggle against the Tsar very early and took the name Stalin, the Man of Steel. In 1917, he took part in the Bolshevik Revolution with Lenin, which overthrew the Tsar and abolished privileges. He gave power to the people. In Lenin's shadow, he only waited for a chance to seize power. Lenin's death was that opportunity. In 1924, he managed to rule out the most important figure of the moment, Trotsky, through party exercises before exiling him to Kazakhstan. No one saw him coming, but only a few weeks later, Stalin came to power. He won't leave you anymore. He chose to settle here. In the Kremlin Castle, the former palace of the Tsars. From there, the Soviet Union will lead the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics, the largest country on Earth. and a few people will blindly follow him for a few years, wanting to go further than Lenin. He wanted to rewrite history, and his determination was absolute, we Bolsheviks. We're a special race. Others are worthless. They're worthless. Don't doubt it, comrades. After the working class, I am ready to devote all my strength and every drop of my blood. Stalin wanted a new account of the past. He abruptly erased the traces of old Russia that the revolution had forgiven. I passed a decree saying that religion is against the interests of the people. He removed the old Orthodox icons throughout the country before destroying them. Instead of the old order, he had a radical project that was to build communism, an ideal, a happy and healthy society, no rich or poor, a world where everything is shared, where everyone has equal opportunities at birth, where health and education are accessible to all. For the Soviet Union, he had unlimited ambitions. Old Russia was always defeated by its backwardness. Slowing down means falling behind and losing. We in the Soviet Union don't want to be defeated again. He launched huge construction projects, underground skyscrapers, railways, dams, power plants. He wanted to modernize Russia at full speed. To make it a paradise for workers, a world where unemployment does not exist, and where every worker can provide a decent life for his family. A world where Stalin takes the first place. We, the pioneers of the great country, the soldiers of the party, are always ready. We thank you, Stalin, for the happiness you are providing our country. Stalin. He's the leader of the communists. His portrait is everywhere. In factories, on trains, in every classroom, even in the dining room. It must be perfect, because it reflects the success of communism. He personally corrected his official biography, which has sold millions of copies in copies, and added a handwritten note throughout the sentence that Stalin was the greatest captain of all time and all peoples. In fact, the real Stalin is more common. He is only 1.60 meters tall, wears wedge-heeled shoes, and often stands on a small wooden platform that makes him look taller. Look, this extraordinary image is his real face. His skin was marked because he had smallpox when he was 7, but strangely in public he had flawless skin. The new Kremlin master is a mystery to his people. He spent his time locked up in his office and jealously hid his private life. Here are the only pictures of his wife left. She was an old comrade in arms, 22 years younger than him. He had 2 children with Nadezhda, Vasily and Svetlana. He spent little time with them, but in his little girl he showed a real fascination. I miss you, Dad. I don't care if the whole world hates me. If Dad asks me to go to the moon, I will. Some photos show Stalin relaxing during some holidays, as he took his deputies to the Black Sea at party villas. Ekaterina Borochilov, the wife of one of his lieutenants, recalled that Stalin loved to explore the wild. He took us there and we sat by a river. We lit a fire, roasted meat, joked and sang. It was really good times. The problem is that for Stalin, bad news has been accumulating since the early years. His policy was disappointing in multiplying large industrial projects. Stalin sacrificed daily life. Russia's population is growing. However, no housing facilities were made available. The families had to move together into requisitioned apartments and occupy all the small spaces. The standard of living was deteriorating. As evidence of these images taken secretly on the streets of Moscow, one of the rare evidence of poverty in the early 1930s was this wealthy British woman, Lady Moonvaden, who took a trip with her personal camera and saw signs of malnutrition everywhere. I was told that this man digging through the trash cans was an old aristocrat. And that this was a famous teacher in the time of the Tsars. Here's a little boy who was alone and asked me for help. The shop windows are almost empty, especially the rows are endless. Some people wait all day and can't buy anything. In the Soviet Union, the communist dream was shattered, but in the Kremlin, Stalin. He doesn't want to hear anything. For him, there is no such thing as failure. The system was flawed because its policy was being sabotaged. He found the culprits among economic officials, as did the Produccion financial desk, whom he considered incompetent and who were really in an awkward position. On the sidelines, Stalin wrote about all his past and present sins. Hang Ruchinov from the testicles if you can stand it. If they give up, throw them into the river. Stalin was only half joking. In 1930, he invented a method of formally pointing out the guilty political judgment. The defendants were scientists, engineers, senior officials. They were all competent, but Stalin. He accused them of sabotaging the Soviet economy. Stalin himself was absent from the debate, but appointed one of his followers as a judge. Andrei Baginsky told him the sentences to be handed down. Murta declared open the session of the Special Court of the Government of the Union of Soviet Socialist Republics in order to make the trial appear credible in the eyes of the public. It was necessary. The defendants were tortured for weeks before they could plead guilty, and they really had no choice. How do I say this? As I have explained in my last statement, my anti-revolutionary feelings towards the Soviet regime have never really left me. I fully acknowledge this. I acknowledge that. Do I deserve the worst punishment for the prosecutor? Now it's bread. The government condemned them and demanded that the defendants be shot. After several days of deliberation, the judge handed down his verdict. I knew Stalin was evaluating his performance, hence a certain feeling. Kalininko 5 and Andrei Bach, under Articles 58358456 and 508011 of the USSR Code, USSR. They are sentenced to the highest penalty, to be shot and all their property confiscated. His sentence will be commuted to 10 years in prison, but the message is clear that those who oppose Stalin will be brutally crushed, as will their loved ones. Stalin is becoming brutal. His relationship with his eldest son, Jacob, who was born in a first union, became cold. He recently attempted suicide. His father showed no mercy. He couldn't even shoot the target. I can't have anything in common with him. Stalin's relationship was also not going well. His wife, who is not weak at all, is constantly reprimanded by her husband. During an argument in which Stalin insulted her, she let herself be taken away. You are an executioner. That's what you are. You are torturing your own son, your wife, the Russian people. It's impossible to live with you after 14 years together. No one has the strength anymore. One winter night, after another fight at an official Kremlin reception, Nadezhda returned to his room and shot himself with a revolver bullet in the heart. The truth will remain hidden for 60 years. The Russians were told that Nadezhda died of appendicitis. Because according to communist leaders, suicide is considered treason. Even his friend Paulina Molotov condemned him. She was not wrong. She left Stalin in such a difficult time. Stalin did not stay at the funeral. He was devastated, or he was not there when necessary. She was not a good one in your place. Your children and I abandoned me as an enemy. He crippled me, ruined my life in the USSR. Nothing will be the same again. Stalin was brutal. From now on, he'll be ruthless. Their first target was the peasants who refused to hand over their land to the state and joined the colony. These huge cooperatives, where everything was shared under the control of the party, Stalin sent police officers. To walk through the fields and requisition the crops. Their mission is to suffocate families who resist their policies. Torture, murder, nothing could stop them. One of these cops is Left Koprov. I took part in these expeditions by probing the ground to uncover the hideouts. I emptied the pantry while forcing myself not to hear the tears of children and the groans of women. Everything was allowed. Destruction. Lies steal the end, justified the means. Our goal is the universal victory of communism. In 1933, the year of the outcome, Stalin's expropriation caused tragedy in Ukraine, one of Europe's wealthiest regions. It had been ravaged by famine in the 1920s under Lenin, but this time the massacre reached unimaginable heights. The peasants had nothing to eat. A father wrote to his son in Moscow, "My dear son, I am writing to tell you that your mother has passed away. He starved to death after months of suffering. I don't have much time myself." Some party members at the scene did not understand that this famine was known or even wanted by Stalin. They protested. Comrade Stalin, a member of the Politburo, knows what is happening in Ukraine. Otherwise, let me imply. A train full of bodies has just arrived in Kiev after picking up bodies on the road in Moscow. Stalin wanted to eliminate Ukrainians who still resisted his policies. He forbade the hungry peasants. Leaving their villages to come to the big cities with full conscience, I sentenced 5 million people to death, half of them children. It's one of the greatest massacres of the century. At the same time, French parliamentarian Edward Guériot arrived in Ukraine at the invitation of the Soviet government. I sincerely wish the Russian people prosperity. I hope my trip will be helpful to your happiness and the peace of the people. The Frenchman and his delegation visited Ukraine by train. He was happy with the trip. I've been through Ukraine, I can assure you. I saw it as a garden in full production. There are only mattress gardens, admirable and irrigated crops, while it is said that Ukraine is being ravaged by famine. Let me shrug. How could the French ignore the deaths of millions of people? In fact, the streets were cleared before he arrived. The workers he met were actors, and we brought food. Edward Herriot was fooled by Moscow's propaganda. Stalin's regime is full of lies. He gave journalists and filmmakers a mission. They shouldn't describe the world as it is. But as it should be. The harvest is bad. We have radiant peasants filmed in magnificent fields. Industrial results were disappointing. We issued a winning press release with false numbers. We invented heroes like this famous miner Alexei Stakhanov, who broke productivity records by mining 14 in a competition. Ratio. This story is completely false. It was invented by the party but it helped deceive the Soviets. In fact, the Soviet Union is no longer just a huge police state. Stalin's agents are everywhere. They control the whole society, and they have received a terrible order not only to arrest suspects, but also to deport them. Everywhere, thousands of men, women, and children are gathered and taken to unknown destinations. Does a child remember how long the trip took? I have no idea. 7 people starved to death in the car. When we got to Tomsk, we were pulled out and the bodies were unloaded. Children, young people, and old people went to the Gulag, the Soviet labor camp. They were true concentration camps established by Stalin long before he appeared in Germany. They were all enemies of the revolution, at least from an official point of view. In fact, ordinary citizens, prominent people, religious people, who have nothing to blame but are not suitable for the operation of the regime, are mixed with ordinary law prisoners in the party. We say it's re-education through labor, and we're proud of it. Here, the deviant spirit must be re-prosecuted. In fact, these prisoners became slaves in the fields of the far north. The temperature sometimes drops to minus 50 degrees a prisoner, right? It's dangerous to stop moving. I can't stop moving my toes and clenching my fists. The act of touching a metal tool with your bare hands can tear off the skin. Maria Yov can't take it anymore. She's a political prisoner. Our team is made up of intellectuals. But among these scarecrows, who will recognize violinists, harpists, scientists? We are in a constant state of daze and stupor. On August 2nd, 1933, an event showed the cruelty and absurdity of the system. On that day, the Stalin Canal opened, a 200-kilometer waterway connecting the White Sea to the Baltic Sea with only picks and shovels. 300,000 prisoners dug this canal exceptionally. Stalin. He decided to move. He wanted to make the channel that would bear his name a symbol of his success. In theory, this is a technical feat that shortened the construction period of the Panama Canal. Is this really another tragedy? "30,000 prisoners, or 1 in 10, died during construction. They died in vain. It may seem unbelievable, but the canal was not dug deep enough to meet Stalin's deadline. Both ships will never be able to use it overseas. We can't imagine the horror caused by the Stalinist system." Most Western media are repeating Bolshevik propaganda lies. Meanwhile, gulags are developing everywhere. This is how French news reports describe an old prison in Siberia's special zone. Revolutionaries in the Special Administrative Region were once imprisoned there by the Soviet government. He decided to give this place another use. Private production will now be carried out there under the supervision of a special scientific institute, intoxicated by propaganda. Every year, communist delegations from all over the world, especially from France, come to Moscow to greet the little father of the people. Despite Stalin's crimes, prestigious rallies were rapidly multiplying. Like the French writer Louis Aragon, who not only approved of Gulag but also publicly praised it, the proletariat will carry out this historical task, that is, to restore human beings for human beings. We are at a time in human history that is similar to the transition from ape to man for the Bolshevik Party, and its last Stalin now explains it to the point of dazzling. At the 1935 Moscow Congress, Maurice Thorez, the leader of the French Communist Party, explained in his speech that Stalin had returned pride to the workers. Listen, comrades. For a moment, the communist workers in the factory didn't know how to respond. They did not know how to defend themselves against such accusations or accusations. There was a time because of sectarianism, they had no means of responding, and there was no harmony between them and the masses of workers. Now they are proud. They are talking. They are answering. They are making their arguments. They are known in the factory. They are called communists. These are the people who organized the United Front and the Popular Front. Are we sure of victory? Because the rudder of our ship is in the firm hands of our beloved great pilot, the great Stalin, who is bound by his communist ideals. The French did not say or wanted to realize that Stalin had changed long ago, and that his sole purpose now was to consolidate his power. Stalin decided to kill an entire generation that still eclipsed him. Remember Lenin's funeral in 1924. Most of those who carried the coffin with Stalin would die rather be executed. Tomsky led to suicide, Rykov shot, Rodek murdered. Stalin found pleasure in neutralizing loved ones. Use your victim, carefully prepare the blow. Carry out your revenge without rest. And then go to sleeping. There's nothing sweeter than this in the world in 1938. He attacked his closest companion in the fight. His dear Bukharin had been friends for 15 years, but he dared to contradict him several times. In his eyes, he became an enemy. To prepare for the fall of this great figure of the regime, the propaganda campaign began across the country. It is believed that these conspiracies were brutally committed by capitalist agents. Dogs of fascism, nothing less. That Bujarin. And your team, comrades. What I have to tell you is confirmed by Stalin. Our country is surrounded by enemies who want to destroy our country and our people. To move against these enemies. Death A. These parasites. During this time in Ljubljana, the police headquarters. Secret Bukharin. Is he being tortured? In a letter. Beg your old friend. Stalin, I'm writing this letter, which will probably be the last. My heart bleeds at the thought that you can believe I'm guilty. Am I willing to crawl on my knees and beg you to cancel this trial? For me, if death awaits me, I beg you. In the name of all you care, don't let me get shot. I'd like to take poison, I beg you. It is true that death awaits Bujarinel. Two of them. In March 1938, in a room full of political police members, his trial began. It's just a formality. Our people want one thing. We need to crush these plagues. Bukharin's here. In it. The doc, but nothing left. No image of him was considered docile enough. For use in propaganda. He'll be shot and his deported family. But above all, he dreamed of attacking the Soviet Union and annexing its territory for the benefit of the German people. The mission of the Nazi movement was to destroy Jewish Bolshevism. Destroying Russia would give the German people the living space their masters needed to feed themselves. My ambition is to be the man who will break Marxism. Stalin finally realized the threat. But too late, the USSR was not ready for conflict. Their weapons were obsolete, their personnel had been decimated. During the terror, he had ordered 20,000 Soviet officers to shoot the staff members around him. In this 1934 film, only a few outdated generals, such as the bold Budioni, who know nothing about modern warfare, remain. You won't change my mind. As soon as the war breaks out, everyone will shout. John will bring cavalry to make up for the delay. Stalin needs some time. In August 1939, he managed to reach a last-minute agreement with Hitler's ambassador to Moscow, Ribbentrop. The two giants signed a non-aggression pact just days before World War II broke out. An unnatural arrangement with many hidden intentions, but it gave Stalin a respite. It's all just a game about who will manage to fool the other. You will see that Russia will be able to avoid war with Germany for a while longer. A week later, on September 1st, 1939, German troops attacked Poland. It's the beginning of World War II. Within weeks, the Nazis crushed the Polish army and won a resounding victory, the first of many. 8 months later, in May 1940, Hitler attacked from the west and occupied France in less than 2 months, imposing his laws, military occupation, racial persecution, and political repression on half of Europe. Meanwhile, Stalin did not remain inactive. In favor of the treaty signed with Hitler, he conquered new territory in the winter of 1941. He still thought he was safe from conflict with Germany, but this time he was wrong. It was at that time that Hitler decided to make all his dreams come true. Destroy the Soviet Union. Is the Barbarossa plan one of the largest military operations in history? Hitler. He planned to overwhelm the Soviet army and reach Moscow in just a few weeks. As early as spring, the German army was preparing for the battle on the border. At the scene, Soviet generals observed the movement of the troops, sounded the alarm, and asked for permission to deploy soldiers. But in the Kremlin, Stalin, as paranoid as ever, afraid of a trap, replied, "You have a big head." But a small brain? Germany will never stand alone in the war against Russia. On June 16, 1941, a spy sent a message saying that an attack was imminent.